Adding graphics to your social media strategy doesn't have to be daunting, and it can add so much value. So today I'm here with Hunter from Verger Design Company. She's a talented graphic designer who worked with an agency and now has her own company. And I've really valued her insight personally, and I knew you would too. So thank you for being here today, Hunter.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Okay, so we'll just dive right in. Why would chiropractors need to define, that's the word, why would they need to define their brand voice and their style, their colors? Why would they need to do that?
Yeah, so essentially your brand becomes the identity of your business. So a lot of the time, it's also kind of what differentiates you from your competitors. So sure, you can have different activities or techniques that you use, but your brand is how your audience is going to relate to you. So making sure that you spend the time to really dive into it and select what speaks to you, but also to your audience is going to be how you really build that correct base to really connect.
I love that. What are some of your tips on like how they can find their style if they're like, I don't really know what colors or what I would want to do? What's your tips on that?
Yeah, I love this question. We could spend hours talking about it, but I'll make it brief. Essentially, the first step really is to figure out a couple of things. Number one, what do you do and what do you offer? Number two, who do you offer it to? And number three, how do you want them to feel when you offer it? So by figuring out those pieces, you can start to develop the message that you're going to be telling to your audience. And the visuals after that are all there to support the message. You know, we could dive into color psychology and typography psychology, but really the thing to think about is your visuals are what support the message that you are sharing with your audience. And so figuring out that message, including, your mission, your core values, like what really does differentiate you. That's all the starting point. So it's so funny because people really do think, okay, well, I have to dive right into like what we're going to look like. But really the base work is so much more important because that's going to be what fuels a strong brand moving forward.
I love that. And I think that that is so true. And like if I think about a pediatric chiropractor who also does a lot of pregnant patients, that is going to be a brand that looks different speaking to those moms and babies than it would a sports chiropractor who is going to have a much more bold, active brand.
Exactly. Exactly.
Fantastic. Okay, so how can chiropractors use graphics from their photos to their Instagram story highlight covers to really tell that story from the theoretical to really concrete?
Yeah. So the way that I like to explain this, also please excuse any weird noise that my dog makes. She is playing with a toy now. But yeah, to really explain this process, the way that I like to do so is your message is it's like the what you write and share verbally is absorbed by your audience consciously. Your
Mhm.
visuals are the subconscious. So
Yeah.
they're always going to play that supporting role to what you're trying to share. And so some examples of this could be particularly for chiropractors are the client experience. What should that client expect when they show up? Okay, well, instead of telling them what to expect, show them. Can you get brand photography done that shows what your office looks like, that shows what your front desk people look like interacting with customers? Even if it's not real customers, you could very easily hire actors or even have friends and family come in and sub in as patients. And this really what this does is this paints the picture for a potential client coming in. So that's one option. Other options are really showing your personality. Okay, because we all know you're not just a chiropractor.
Mhm.
There's so much more to your life than that. So really kind of trickling in those little pieces as well, because the main goal of the brand, aside from, sharing this message, is to connect with people. So big time, lean into the photographs, especially on Instagram, because it is a very visual platform. And the same goes for graphics, anything that can help supplement the message that you are sharing is really the direction that you want to go. And then I always have to throw in this piece as well, because consistency is key. Making sure that whatever you create is the same across the platform. So if you're going to get professional photos done, making sure that you're willing to invest in more of those professional photos so you have a kind of a stock of them. The last thing you want to do is have like some really, really nice professional photos and then some like blurry iPhone photos. You want to make sure that you're consistent and professional across the board. And the same goes for graphics.
Excellent. I love that because, yeah, and like you said, letting your office shine through so that they feel like, oh, it's not this alien planet that I've landed on. They really have that vision into where you are and who you are. Because, yes, I know Florida and chiropractor, I can't believe I mixed that up. A chiropractor in Florida who practices barefoot and in jeans. And so then her brand style would definitely need to reflect that she has that beachy vibe.
Exactly.
Okay, so what should a chiropractor include in their style guide as they're thinking through all of these to make sure that their assistant or their social media manager or a graphic designer who they were hiring could kind of be on track with that consistency you were talking about?
Yeah, this is a super important question, and I'm glad that you're asking it. A style guide is something, in my personal opinion, any business should have because it really is what allows you to stay consistent as you hire on new people. So you could have a very, intense style guide. You could have a very basic one. We'll just talk about the basics, and I'll throw in a couple of additional things that you can add. But you always want to have your logos, and that includes the correct way and the incorrect way to use them, because a logo can't be used the same on every platform. So you really want to make sure that you are showing the people who you will be working with and who will be creating your graphics, like, this is how I want it to be used. Because we think that everyone's going to think like us
Right.
and know what to do, but it doesn't work like that, I promise. So
Yeah.
make sure you have those logos, as well as the correct and incorrect usages. Have the colors, including the hex codes. That way, your designer or social media manager or assistant can easily duplicate those colors, and they're not guessing. Fonts, if you have specific fonts. Another thing to include is kind of like photography styling. If you are, especially if you're going to be working with a brand photographer or something, making sure that, I only use photos that are like X. We don't use photos that are like Y. That's very helpful for a designer. If you have any type of like layout specifications, like say maybe you only use rounded corners
Oh,
on
yeah.
things, that's something you'll want to include. Anything that's very specific to your brand, that when you build it yourself or when you think of your brand, it's always like that. That's what you're going to want to have in the style guide.
I love that. I think that that's something that isn't necessarily um, thought of first. It's like, oh, I want an Instagram account. Maybe I need a social media manager. Maybe I should get photos, but having a core document for everybody to work off of and add to is really helpful. So I love all of those points. Those are good even for me. I should keep adding to my style guide and improving it.
Absolutely.
So, if a lot of chiropractors are probably doing some of their graphics on their own, or their team is, maybe they're doing an infographic to share a little bit of information, say for Instagram. What are some tips that you would have for making that graphic more balanced and visually pleasing?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say to always remember is that most of your viewers are going to be viewing this on mobile.
Hmm.
So don't add a bunch of text. It is very hard to read a bunch of text in an image. So making sure that, whatever infographic you create is very visual heavy, not necessarily text heavy. Another key point is really consider white space. Our eyes, we're staring at screens all day long. Our eyes really are begging for a place to rest. And that's what happens in that white space. And when I say white space, that really means the negative space on the page, the space that's not being filled up by an item. So
Hmm.
those are some of the key things that I would do. And then also just stay consistent with your branding. If you have certain colors that you use those colors in the infographic. If you use certain typography, use that typography in the infographic. And then from there, just have fun with it. I feel like we sometimes take social media a little too seriously, and it really is still a place to have fun. So have fun in your graphics. Enjoy what you're doing. We're real serious a lot, and we don't always have to be.
Yeah, I love that. It is true too. I think that realizing we can just have fun with it, and we think maybe we'll make this huge faux pas like, oh man, should I have aligned that differently or whatever? But do you think it's still more valuable to create some of your own infographics on Canva or something else rather than just resharing everybody else's?
Absolutely. Because you can share a lot of other people's content, which helps you look like an expert as well. You're leaning into these other people, which you really want to show up as yourself too. And you have valuable information to share. Your audience wants to hear from you. So making sure that you're showing up for them in that way and creating those graphics, because we don't all learn the same. A graphic that someone else has made, it might work for you, but it might not work for me. But perhaps a graphic that you make does resonate with me. So really, creating that original content, but also sharing the other content is kind of the way to go.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good viewpoint. Also, this wasn't something that I had thought about earlier, but I know how much sticky content we talk about and how graphics play such a huge role in what other people would find inspiring, what they might want to save, what they might want to share. So I think that that's where those graphics and graphic design can really shine. And I know someone who is a chiropractor who was saying, well, is that just filling in? Like, is that just fill in information? And it's like you said, it's so valuable to resonate with someone who might not be visually drawn to an image as much as they would to those graphics. So
exactly. And the thing to remember too is, not everyone on your feed is going to see the one graphic you shared, but they might see the next one that you create. So it really is kind of playing to the algorithm and doing what feels right for you too. But also I have to add this, don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone. Because I feel like it's very easy for us to say, well, do what feels good for you. And it's like, okay, well, what feels good to me is what I've been doing. It's like, okay, wait a second, do try new things, but feel like yourself when you do it.
That's great. Okay. Well, I want to wrap this up. This has been so valuable. And I know that these are all great tips for chiropractors to implement. But I'm sure some of them are just ready to hand over some work to a pro like you. So tell us about your company and how they could work with you.
Yeah, so Virtual Design Co. I started right at the start of COVID, but previously had worked with a marketing agency for about 3 years, and did a lot of their graphics. I was the lead graphic designer on that team, which was really, really exciting. Now what I do, I lean heavily into branding, but I am offering day rate services this year in 2021. So instead of having to hire on a graphic designer full time, you can book a day with me. You reserve that entire day yourself, and I'm your graphic designer for that day. So essentially, we've got a couple setup pieces, and then what we'll do is we'll just crank out as much of your work as we can get done in the time that we have booked. And then that gives you an opportunity to kind of run with professional graphics without having to fully commit to paying an in-person on-staff designer. I found that it works very, very well for a lot of clients. It gives them that flexibility that they want, and it also allows me flexibility as well. So it works really nicely.
Yeah. So then would they need to come to you with kind of like the list of, I want to make these 5 infographics for Facebook and Instagram, and here's what they should say? And then how does that work?
Yeah, so essentially what would happen is there's a whole onboarding process, and we'll really break down what exactly it is you would like for me to work on. We'll talk about, top projects, the big key pieces that you really want to walk away with, and then as well as maybe perhaps a couple filler projects if we have time. And then what I would do is map out exactly what I would need from you. So this will all be prior to our start day, and you would get me everything I need from you before that start day, which I would give you a curated list. And then on that start day, our time would start and I would immediately get to work. And then you'd make sure that you're available that way. As soon as we're ready for proofs, I can send them over and you could give a thumbs up or say, actually, can we tweak a couple of things, and then keep things moving after that. But really a lot of it is pre-work that happens, and I guide these clients through it to make sure that they feel comfortable and that I have everything that I need, that we can really hit the ground running.
Fantastic. So I'm trying to think of some of the bigger projects that chiropractors might have for design, whether it is like a brochure or a handout that they want to have available to just be giving free value to their audiences. Is something like that, is like maybe a 3 or 4 page brochure, something that you could get done in a day rate?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something that could definitely get done. All I would ask is, again, that all the copywriting be given to me beforehand. Any photos that you want included in it be given beforehand. But yeah, that is definitely a project that could fit in that time. That ebooks as well are a very good option if you're trying to collect email addresses, social media graphics like we talked about. Anything, really just about anything aside from branding and website work can fit into that category. And then if we don't finish the project, we just book another day and we wrap things up, or we could book a half day if need be.
Fantastic. Now, are you offering website design as well?
Yeah, so I have some offerings that I can give. I don't work on WordPress, so if a website is already on WordPress, that's not where my expertise is.
Yeah.
I do lean more towards the branding side, but that doesn't mean that I can't do website work.
Okay, fantastic. All righty. Well, I thank you so much for your time. If any of the watchers have any more questions on this, you can put comments on the video and in the group, and we will get your graphic design questions answered. I will also put all of the information for how you can work with Hunter and get more information from her as well. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.